What if Heisenberg and Ethan teamed up at the end of Resident Evil Village? This is a question people want to know an answer to, and I think I might have one. This is the first in a long line series I plan on doing on the channel, where we go through Resident Evil's history and its story events and go, what if this happened, you know? First off, I want to start with the more currently prominent one, which is what if Ethan and Heisenberg teamed up at the end of Village to take on Miranda and save Rose. This is something people wanted to see, and while it's not a possibility anymore because of the actual ending of the game, I have kind of come up with my own personal idea on what could have happened and what could have been. So, if you're interested, please do leave a like. If you want to see more of this type of video in the future, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. I plan on doing one of these at least every 1 to 2 weeks. It takes a lot of time to kind of sit down and essentially write a storyline. So, yeah, it's going to be a bit delayed between uploads. But, nevertheless, I hope you all enjoy. And let's get into my basis of what could have happened at the end of Resident Evil Village if Ethan and Heisenberg took on Miranda together. So let's start the story from when Heisenberg asks Ethan to help him take on Miranda, and instead of pushing Ethan down a pit, they shake hands and agree that they will help each other get what they want, and that is all. A partnership is made, and they leave the factory and head towards the village. By this point, the Megamycete is almost all but awake, and the village is starting to experience more of those tremors, until eventually the mold rises out from the village and the Megamycete has reached its full power. This would mean that any minute now, Miranda will be taking Rose to the ceremony site to begin the ritual to bring back her daughter. After seeing this, Heisenberg and Ethan form a plan. Ethan will go and find Rose, while Heisenberg deals with the overwhelming amount of lichens and mold coming into the village to try and slow down the overall growth of the Megamycete and to make sure that Ethan has a almost safe passage straight to Miranda. At this point in the game, the player consumes control of Heisenberg, again in a first person perspective, but is able to manipulate metal around him to make weapons in the form of melee weapons or ranged type spears built out of shrapnel from around the destroyed buildings, and then works his way to the centre of the village where he sees Chris and his team on the hill above him. This then transitions to a cutscene where Ethan is talking to Chris across the phone, telling him of the change of plans and the agreement he made with Heisenberg. Chris is slightly not impressed with the agreement that's been made, but is assured by Ethan that Heisenberg and him want the same thing overall, and this then takes you straight back to the Chris portion of the game, but instead of going under the Megamycete at the end, you fight your way down to the centre of the village to meet with Heisenberg, who explains what he is going to do and what he needs Chris to do in order to stop Miranda from fully completing her ritual with the Rose in the sanctuary site. After the cutscene plays out and the plan is then explained to Chris and his team disperse in order to clear out the rest of the village, while Chris and Heisenberg go underneath the main mold to fight the underground boss. You would normally fight as Chris, and you will now play as Heisenberg, and this will essentially be a much harder boss fight, with you being able to use Heisenberg's abilities against it to stun it, or Chris calls in the airstrike to kill it after a certain amount of attempts. The boss will be a lot more armoured up, and the only way to really stun it will be to hit in a certain spot using some of Heisenberg's manipulated material that drops off of the boss's armour while Chris shoots at it. When this is said and done, the Megamycete is then rigged to blow, just like how Chris would have done it normally, and they then go on to find Mia locked in Miranda's lab underneath the main ceremony site. This will then transition you back to Ethan for the start of the final encounter. When you transition back to Ethan, you'll be on your way up to the main entrance of the ceremony site when your phone rings. You are interrupted from answering it when you see Mia approaching you from the top of the stairs. Ethan is just shocked that he's seeing his wife, and after a certain amount of time, he then realises that this is indeed Miranda he's talking to, as Chris hasn't actually explained what powers she has to him directly at this point, and he is then eventually killed off how he would normally be killed off through the main story of the game. You would then go through that dream sequence where he sees Evelyn in the quote-unquote afterlife and explains who he really is before being woken up to the sight of Heisenberg and Chris standing over you and lifting you back to your feet. With the three of you all together at the entrance to the ceremony site, you will then approach the gateway and head into the boss fight. There will be three of you in there, each side character helping Ethan in its own way. This will depend very much on your setup, as Heisenberg will be able to knock Miranda out of the sky with his metal manipulation in terms of spears to give you an opening when it's necessary. I thought this would most be ideal when she's doing her 3-orb attack above the head. If you shoot all of those, it briefly stuns her, and if you throw the spear at her, that takes her to the ground, give you some easy damage. Again, with the NPC's help, the boss will be a lot more tanky and a lot more harder to beat. After a certain amount of time has elapsed and the boss fight continues, she will then go down to a final stand like she does normally and die. This will then cause her final reimmersive form to appear, and during the fight, Heisenberg would have been mortally wounded but not enough to kill him, which would then trigger his transformation, and the cutscene will play out with Chris trying to carry Ethan out of the arena as he is still, dying like he's supposed to in the story. And you'll then witness Heisenberg's mutated form take on and try and wrestle with this mutant monster form that Miranda has turned into. This would buy time for Chris and Ethan to escape with Rose without Miranda being able to stop them. Eventually, you'll get to the bridge and Ethan will slowly start to kind of crumble apart like he does in the main game. Ethan will explain to Chris what he really is in his kind of last moments and hand over Rose to him. Give him the same speech of kind of protecting her and raising her to be strong before turning back to walk back up the stairs to help Heisenberg defeat Miranda once and for all, taking the detonator with him. As Ethan gets to the top of the stairs, he collapses onto his knees as he watches his arms slowly disintegrating away. He takes a look at the momentous fight that's happening before him between the two completely mutated figures, and with one last breath reaches for the detonator and is just about to pull the trigger before the screen fades to black. This then cuts back to the helicopter scene where you see Mia, Rose and Chris take off and the village explodes behind them. Mia is convinced that Ethan is gone, as well as Chris, but then another cutscene plays out where in the last moments just before detonation, Heisenberg has essentially covered Ethan from the blast and protected him, sacrificing himself to save Ethan. They have a little heart-to-heart at the end as Heisenberg is dying, saying that he realised that Miranda may have took him from his own family, but that doesn't mean that Ethan deserves the same fate, and therefore sacrifices himself for Ethan to go and return to his family later on in the game. The end of the game vaguely plays out the same from this point. You see Rose all grown up at Ethan's grave. You find out that the BSA have some kind of bioweapon involvement with the village, and the final cutscene after the credits plays out with Rose going to visit Ethan's grave, have the usual cutscene play out, and her kind of suggest to the player that she has some kind of powers that she knows how to use. When the car drives off into the distance, it is slowly coming to a stop at the end of the road, and we do in fact see Ethan approaching the car at the end, therefore kind of confirming the theory that he is still alive, and then that will lead into the next entry in the series, Resident Evil 9. I know this is a completely different take on the ending, and I know it might not make the best sense, but I have tried to kind of make a story that would fit kind of with the same ending of the game, not changing it entirely, because obviously there was a idea for the end that it would be the end of Ethan's story, but people wanted to see Heisenberg and Ethan team up. I said turn up at the beginning, didn't I? Team up at the end, but I feel like how the ending works is it should stay the same, but there should have obviously been a choice between what ending you would have had. It would have been a lot more different than the Mia or Zoe ending from Resident Evil 7. But that's it, let me know what you think. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this in my life. I've never made up an actual kind of story like this in my life. I know it's loosely based off of the actual ending in the game, but I did want to change it slightly so that people got that experience. To see Ethan and Heisenberg team up at the end of the game to take on Miranda. I didn't want the ending to be completely different, but I did want it to kind of go in a slightly different direction. Hopefully it made sense. The this is kind of a brief kind of rundown of what I had made up. I've obviously made notes about it and tried to explain it on the video the best I possibly could. If it doesn't make sense, I apologise. These videos will get better over time, but I have kind of been preoccupied doing other videos at the time. I will be focusing a lot more on these in terms of future episodes. Do let me know if there's any you want to see in the future. I know this is like a big important one people were talking about with Village, so I wanted to do this one first. But there is plenty of other ideas I have, so do let me know if there is any specifics you would like to see. But this has been the What If Ethan and Heisenberg teamed up at the end of Resident Evil Village to take on Miranda. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you understood what was going on and how I changed the ending. If you did, be sure to leave a like, and if you are interested in subscribing for new Resident Evil content every single day, then by all means do so, completely optional. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.